I think one of the first things I learned in terms of following my dreams and achieving my dreams is that you have to have a realistic idea of what it's going to cost you to do it. And that one conversation with her was pivotal to me. I walked away from the idea of becoming regular job Tina and decided to really stay true to what I originally wanted for myself. My story starts in childhood, as it does for most artists, and I always wanted to be a fine art painter, but I didn't know that that world even existed. So I went to school for graphic design and illustration, and for many years had a successful career with the publishing house. But around 2010, 2011, that publishing house went bankrupt. The children's storybooks that I illustrated for disappeared because kids got iPads and iPods and interactive DVDs. And I had an opportunity to either become a dental hygienist or go for my big dream of finally becoming a fine art painter. And my moment of decision kind of came to me when I went to the dental hygiene school and actually took the test to see if I qualified and signed up for all the financial aid, and then essentially almost passed out in the elevator there because I realized if I took one more step in that direction, I wasn't going to be myself anymore. So I met with one of my closest friends, Laura, and she essentially sat me down and said, here is this drawing of this really messy situation. She scribbled on this pad of paper. And in this scribble are all the things you're going to have to go through in order to become a fine artist. Essentially, rejection, your family telling you you're being selfish, learning things that are really difficult to learn, possibly being poor for a while, a lot of different really scary things. And she put 2 dots, one on the closest side of me from that scribble and one on the other side. And she said, if you want to become Tina the fine artist, you're going to have to go through all of this. And now knowing that you're going to see all of this pain and all this stress and suffering in the next couple of years as you learn this new life, do you still want to try to be that? And with tears in my eyes, I said, absolutely I do. And so I think one of the first things I learned in terms of following my dreams and achieving my dreams is that you have to have a realistic idea of what it's going to cost you to do it. And that one conversation with her was pivotal to me. I walked away from the idea of becoming regular job Tina and decided to really stay true to what I originally wanted for myself. One of the important aspects of how I got started once I knew what I really wanted to try to become was trying to figure out how to become that while living the life I was already living, which was a Midwestern mom who had worked for herself. I had an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old and a loving, lifelong partner. I couldn't just pick up from my life and go to Italy to learn how to be a painter for 4 years. So I had to figure out how to become what I wanted to become while still also being the self I loved and had created for myself, to preserve the life that I had already made. So I spent a lot of time researching how could I learn to become a fine artist without sacrificing the parts of my life I wanted to keep. And I was really fortunate to come across a website by the artrenewalcenter.org, and they have a beautiful map on there that tells you around the world where are the ARC approved ateliers. So a little bit of research went a long way, and I found a school in Scottsdale where I could learn how to do what I love doing in short week-long intensives. So I didn't have to abandon my life and my family to go to a 2 or 4 year long program. I just went for these week-long intensives and came home and then studied for a year and then went back for another week. I gathered all the materials that I needed, including books and DVDs. I actually took notes when I was in my classes and reread my notes again and again, making cue cards for myself that I would hold up above my easel or tape up with, masking tape. And I incorporated my children into the process. I have my daughter hold the palette knife and paste in like frosting into the color charts that I was learning how to do, and then she'd give me back the palette knife and I'd mix the next color and then she'd fill in the square. And so I used my ability to be a good painter and a good wife as part of becoming a good artist together. My life as a parent and a wife came along with me as my life as a master artist. I didn't feel like I had to toss out the baby with the bathwater. I just needed to put it all together. The next most important thing that happened for me was the fact that I had a supportive partner. At this time in my life, I was the breadwinner, and it was a big shock to my family to have the main client that I had been working with for so many years go bankrupt. And learning how to paint isn't a paying job in itself. So without a supportive partner who was willing to say, I see that you love this, and whatever you make for yourself as a painter, you can keep and put into your business, reinvest into learning new things, to traveling to where you need to be in order to make the connections and networking that you need. That was essential to me. And with the artists that I have taught and mentored over the years, those who don't have any kind of support system with them are the ones that struggle the most. And so for me, the next step was being frugal with myself. Like, the classes I was taking were all on scholarship. They were partially paid for by the school. So I was resourceful in finding ways to make sure that I wasn't wasting money as I pursued my dreams, but that I also had people in my life, including my kids and my husband and my sisters and best friends. Really, essentially everyone in my community was cheering me on in it, and that was valuable, and doing it without that can be so much more difficult. The first big success, actually there were a couple that came really quite early on. Within a year of beginning to learn how to paint, I was asked by a handful of rural artists here in Missouri if they could come to my studio space and learn what I had learned at the school I had traveled to in Scottsdale. And of course, my husband at that point was working 3 jobs, and he said, if you do that for free, I'll wring your neck, which he meant in the sweetest, most serious way, that my generosity wasn't going to be able to go every which way. I was going to have to begin to see worth in what I was doing, and if I was going to invite other people in to learn from me, I would have to charge. So I charged each of them $60 and spent just one day teaching with them. And though it had never in my life been a consideration to become any kind of instructor or teacher, I discovered that I absolutely loved teaching, and I felt high. As high as I feel when I'm painting. I just truly love seeing another artist get what they get and have the ideas blossom in their mind, and the confidence that they get when they do achieve what they're trying to do. And so there was probably my very first success, and just another year after that, I started receiving international awards with the work that I was creating, which, as I saw those competitions as an advertising opportunity more than a kind of a feather in my cap or something to boost my ego, I was able to start to sort of translate teaching and winning prizes into ways to actually add on to my business model. So the practicality of those two things became something that was important, and being able to see almost all the things that you come across when you're achieving your dreams, when you're working towards achieving your dreams. If you can try to find a way to see them and how they can be practically used towards that, as opposed to just pat yourself on the back when you win a prize, or like it when a student gets what you are teaching them. Essentially use those things as tools towards taking your next steps for yourself. It can be so much more efficient. The business side of creativity was actually kind of, strangely enough, you'd think that as a graphic designer and illustrator for more than 10 years ahead of becoming a painter, that I might have had so much business acumen that I would never have needed to learn anything about that. But that wasn't true at all. It was actually Robin Blakely through Creative Center of America that helped me understand my role as a business person in the fine art world. Essentially, I needed to make sure that I was the CEO of my company, and that I was able to assess what my business needs were, and then essentially give myself tasks or roles to fill and also be able to assess whether or not I can or cannot do those tasks. So for someone like me, a fine artist, my weaker points are in the accounting and the sales end, and where I have my weaknesses, I know I need to hire or ask for outside help. And being able to be the person in your business who can take that bird's eye view and know what you need, essentially know what you don't know, and get the help when you need it, is probably the most important business decision you'll ever make. For anyone who's trying to go for their dreams at any age, essentially what you need to ask yourself is, if not now, when? If you aren't going to try for it today, you probably aren't ever going to try for it. And there isn't going to ever be an easier time than right now. The problem of waiting for your dreams to come true is essentially you end up becoming pacified or comforted by the fact that you never actually are trying. And it's a trap that unfortunately a lot of entrepreneurs fall in. They're always taking the next class or trying to collect the right amount of equipment or the right amount of money or the right amount of support that they need, and essentially never taking that first step. And so doing that is essentially what does make your dreams come true. Essentially, if you do try for what you're wanting to do, you are more likely to succeed in it. And you certainly never will succeed in it if you don't try at all. In terms of moving forward, once you are starting in your dream, one of the most important things to think about doing, once you know what like your skill set is, once you know what your weaknesses are, is to stay organized, to essentially segment or compartmentalize your job descriptions, which you handle yourself. I have a system where I handle my administrative work on just the first 2 days of the week, and I allow myself my creative end work on the last 3 days of the business week, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I keep Saturday and Sunday for my family and personal and other kinds of obligations whenever possible. The job that I do now requires a lot of travel. I'm across the United States and abroad, anywhere from 9 to 20 times in a year. So I also accept the fact that the structures that I've built for my day-to-day week may not always be able to be held up. So being flexible, even though you have a good structure, think of yourself like water. Whatever the container is for the day, you're going to have to fit into that container when you work for yourself. And to be too rigid and too strict on certain rules and not able to kind of go with the flow when the flow is needed can actually shut down opportunities or cause you unnecessary stress. If I were looking back at myself here at age 49 to when I started working for myself in general back in 2000, I would have told myself to keep moving physically. I wish that I could impart to any entrepreneur at any age that working for yourself is probably the most stressful job you'll ever take. It's essentially around the clock because you're the only person who's running things. But if you don't take care of yourself physically and you don't keep your social connections going on, you can really suffer as the years go by. You might find yourself with a really small friend group or not having built those long-term connections like people who have an office space, office social network to rely on. In my life as an entrepreneur, of course, my children witnessed what it was like to have a mom who worked from home all the time. And there was no question that both of them were going to be sort of self-driven in that way. And it's true, they both have worked for themselves a little bit. And my son especially is working actor out in New York City. But when he came to me as he was graduating high school, he said to me, Mom, do you know how I know I can do it? And I said, oh gosh, how do you know? And he said, because I watched you do it. And I said, oh my gosh, sweetheart, please marry someone with health insurance. So essentially I sat him down. As children, they don't see what goes on behind the curtains, so they may not have been privy to the conversations my husband and I had about ends meeting, or really understood the kind of effort I had to put into being my own manager, being my own motivator, and essentially taking both the good and the bad whenever you do well as an entrepreneur, the heat and the feast and the famine, it's all on you. But essentially what I explained to him is that if, as a working actor, he might not be able to have what we call like a big cup of tea life. So essentially I explained to him, your life is like a cup of tea. And if your cup of tea is really big and really full, meaning you're going to have a 5-bedroom house and 2 vehicles and 5 kids, and you're going to send them all to college, right? You may see yourself managing and keeping that cup of tea steady by using all your hands, all your fingers. And that might mean that you would have to do all kinds of jobs in order to manage that. But you can choose the size of your life. And I said to him, if you want to have a little cappuccino or espresso size life, you might be able to manage it with just 2 fingers. So stage acting and maybe being able to be some sort of a lighting or sound tech, maybe all you have to do in order to manage a cappuccino size life without things tipping and spilling. And so any kind of entrepreneur needs to recognize that you have to choose the kind of life that you want, how big you want to manage it, how difficult and how vast, how many people are going to be under the umbrella of your support, and decide those decisions based off of what you really want for yourself, and then basically find the different things that are going to help you manage that life. So for example, for myself, as a fine art artist, I sell work and I make money that way. I do commissions and I make money that way. I teach, I mentor, I do live speaking events. Essentially, I'm choosing to have a relatively small cup of tea life so that I don't have to work all the time. I don't have to manage more than what I can. And so I'm not devastated if I, for instance, don't get this particular workshop or that particular painting sits around for 2 or 3 years. It's essentially, I want to explain to any entrepreneur that the level of stress and the level you have to manage is a choice. And you can, if you do, set out to do it mindfully and choose for yourself the things that you want, the places that you want to be able to go, what you want to be able to afford, that can be so much more manageable if you think about it on the front end and then essentially plan the things that you want to spend your time doing in order to create that stability that you need for yourself. I got some great advice once from a collector of mine. They actually own 5 different businesses. And one day I had sold them a small painting when I was first starting for just $250. And the following week they asked me about a different painting that I had painted more recently, and it was $1,500. And he said, whoa, how did you go from $250 to $1,500 like overnight? And I was like, well, it was a bigger painting. And I basically was just charging a lot more money because it was a bigger painting. And he said, I'd like to talk to you, if you don't mind, about how you think about what you earn in a year and what you make, and see if I can help you essentially get a grasp on what you need to make in a year so that you can be more structured and your pricing can be within what your clients expect it to be, essentially meeting your market, instead of being more like, oh, I love the work I painted today, so it's going to be really expensive, and I don't think that painting is that great, so it won't be that expensive at all. So basically confusing my market with what my prices were. And so I allowed him to tell me what he thought I should do. And he said, essentially, tell me, what do you need to make in a year? And I was embarrassed. I didn't really know, and I kind of vaguely did know, but I was afraid to admit that that was what I needed. And to say those numbers out loud and to say that I was worth that much money felt really scary. So he saw me hem-hawing around and he said, just tell me, what do you need to make in a year? And I said, well, if I made $80,000 a year, which seemed crazy, to make that kind of money as a painter, I thought, there's just no way it's going to happen. He said, okay, $80,000 a year. So let's just add 30% onto that because you're going to need taxes, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, 30%. I didn't even think about taxes. So now we're just going to roughly say it's about $110,000 a year, maybe just $100,000 for easy sake. He said, take that $100,000 a year and divide it by how many large paintings you think you can make at $5,000 each. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I started to do the math based on this grid that he taught me about. Take that $100,000 grid and divide it by the things you think you can fill into those grids. So I could paint X number of large paintings, X number of medium paintings, X number of small sketches, and essentially fill in those grids with the prices based off of the inventory that I had to offer, whether it was painting or teaching or mentoring or showing up for a speaking event. It worked brilliantly, and I made $83,000 the first year I tried it. I was so grateful for this very visual way of sort of plugging in, making an actual grid, and telling myself, I can teach this many workshops, I can paint this many paintings, and just having it there for me to kind of, rearrange. If I sold something extra big, that means I wouldn't have to maybe teach that 9th or 10th workshop that year, or maybe I could just take 2 weeks off and not worry about painting a bunch of extra small pieces. I felt like I had control over what I earned, and it's worked for me every year since. The last and most important part I want to offer to any entrepreneur is the community that you build for yourself really matters. And I've connected myself with the major art organizations within the world that I work. So whatever it is that your subject matter is, there's going to be the fundraising organizations and the conferences and the connections that are going to allow you to network. And surrounding yourself with those types of communities are really going to help you not only stay social as a person who works for themselves and with themselves, but also when you have something to share or you have a question that needs to be answered, then you have that pool of resources to go to. So I want to encourage you to make sure that you join your local and regional and international groups that are going to keep you connected, even if there's a small fee involved with becoming a member. And then make sure you understand what the benefits of those memberships are and you use them. So for instance, I belong to the Portrait Society of America. I served as one of their ambassadors for a few years, and I also am one of their long-time mentorship mentors for their Cecilia Bow Forum, which is strictly for women learning how to become painters. But being part of that organization, being able to reach other artists where I can volunteer and also be faculty, and then essentially tell them when I have workshops abroad or nearby, and invite them to share what I have going on. It's a give and take, and it can be so useful to you as an entrepreneur. It might not even cost very much at all. And all of those memberships and things like that are usually part of your tax deductible fees that you are incurring throughout your year, and so there's a lot of both financial and social and networking benefits to essentially expanding your community and being a part of, and sometimes volunteering in the world of whatever it is that you work in.